Dr. Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
My pleasure to be on.
Remembrance Day is coming up, and so is Veterans Day in the United States. And we honor all the people who fought in war. But at the same time, I think it's really important for us to take a moment to think about the uselessness or the pointlessness of war itself.
Yeah. Over the last few years, there have been many articles published by thinkers talking about the pointlessness of war. So we have one in the Atlantic, we have one in the New York Times. And after the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan recently, this became a point of discussion again. Like, what's the point of all of this if after 20 years, we seem to be back where we started with the Taliban now in power, rolling back the rights of women. And we see the chaos continuing there with, one group of Muslims, attacking the other group, perhaps the ISIS, or attacking the Taliban. And more recently, we got news of a Shiite mosque being bombed with some 50 people being killed. All of this is atrocious. And it is shameful that Muslims are doing this to each other. But it also raises the bigger question, like, why go to war in the first place? Is that really a solution to the world's problems?
Mm-hmm.
And as we come to Remembrance Day, we should remember not only the fallen soldiers, but we should also remember the fallen civilians.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 20 million people died in the First World War. And there were another 20 million casualties.
70 million in the second.
70 million died in the Second World War. Is war really worth it? Mm-hmm. And we have to bring our religious perspectives to bear on the question so that Muslims, Christians, and others who can inform a peaceful outlook into the world can actually do that and help people to understand that wars are pointless. We should work towards world peace, and we should do everything we can to avoid war with all of its evils.
Mm-hmm. I've seen the Dalai Lama speak about this quite a bit, that war, there's no point to war, that we should work towards peace. What does Islam say about it, Dr. Shabir?
Yeah, to be sure, some religions take a very pacifist stance, and Islam takes a middle position. Recognizing that there may be some occasions on which you are forced into war, mm-hmm. Because there's no better alternative. But even then, you have to follow certain rules of entering into war in a just manner. And we know from just war theory more generally that there are rules to be observed before you even go into a war. There are rules to observe while you are within the war, and then there are rules to observe after the war is over. This mm-hmm. is what the Quran speaks about when it says, when the war lays down its burdens. Mm-hmm. So the Quran actually gives prescriptions regarding all of these different phases.
So you think the Quran has its own just war theory?
Yes, and this is interesting because before the just war theory developed to its fullness in the Middle Ages by Christian and other philosophers, the Quran actually has many prescriptions that fit within that broader theory. For example, for going into war, to begin with, you can only be called by a legitimate leader. And we can see that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did not go into war unless and until he actually was a state leader in Medina, which is in the last phase of his life. Second, the war is only a last resort. It's after you've tried everything else and you've given all kinds of warning to whoever is the perpetrator of any injustice at the time. So we see all of this being done in the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, in the Quran itself. For example, the 9th chapter of the Quran begins with an open warning to all of humankind, and they're given reprieve. They're given 4 months to cease their hostilities. The war is a last resort in that whatever peace treaties can be made has to be made. And the same surah that I just referred to encourages the Muslims to keep their peace treaties. The 8th chapter of the Quran says that if others incline towards peace, the Muslims should also incline towards peace, which means we should come together in a treaty. So if there was to be a war at all, it has to be done for a just cause, and the just cause can be for self-defense, or it could also be for righting a wrong or for removing an oppressor. And the Muslims in that environment saw themselves as the liberators of humanity, because they were going to pave the way for people to have freedom from the oppressive monarchs of the day. It's another matter that we are still dealing with oppressive monarchs to this day. But that was what was accomplished in the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Now, during the war, you cannot use oppressive means yourself. You have to use proportionate means. And there has to be civilian immunity. The Quran says in the second chapter, the 190th verse, that you are to fight against those who are fighting you, but you're not to transgress beyond that, because God does not like those who transgress limits. So that means civilians who are not obviously fighting against you are to be immune from any of these attacks. And then after the war, as I already indicated, the Quran speaks about the war laying down its burdens. That's when you will release the prisoners of war, because those who were taken during the heat of battle, when they were a threat to you, now can be released as a free act of kindness, or you can charge a price if that's what is needed to achieve the objectives of this war, and to repatriate, rebuild, which is one of the things we're now asking about. Afghanistan, after 20 years of war, where is the rebuilding? Because for a war to be just, it cannot be that you go in there, you destroy everything, you come back out, and you say, okay, we've won the war. But what have you done to that country? What is the, is there an infrastructure that will support decent and reasonable living conditions in that country? So all of these are issues that have to be brought to the fore as we come to Remembrance Day, remembering not only the veterans who died in war, but remembering the civilians who were killed, remembering the damage, remembering the evils, the harms that have been done to society as a result
and to the
of
environment,
wars,
right?
and to the environment as well.
And the great cost, the billions and billions of dollars that have been spent.
Exactly. If all of that money could have been rechanneled to, protect the environment, to protect the animals, to ensure better living conditions for people, to ensure literacy for the rest of our planet, and so on. All of this would have been, reasonable ways of expenditure. But there is a war machinery that needs to continue with its wheels turning. New weaponry has to be tried out in the field, and there has to be investment in the production of such war machinery. So there are many different, reasons that lead to war, which are not really justifiable reasons. It's not anymore that people are just trying to remove oppressors or to right wrongs or produce a better world. People are in this for their own pockets. Some people would like for the country to be destroyed so that they can go in there as part of the rebuilding process. They will get the contracts to rebuild, so they get rich in the end. So war pays for some people. And these are all evil objectives that people have used in order to start wars or encourage the furtherance of war. But we, as people of religion, Muslims, Christians, and others, you mentioned the Dalai Lama, there are some religions out there that are entirely pacifist. We recognize these different perspectives. We celebrate them all, and we need to combine our resources as people of faith to produce a better world, and that should be a world that lives in peace and that shuns war.
Dr. Shabir, the contours of war is changing. It's not just on the battlefield, but there are remote attacks like drone attacks. There are cyber attacks. There might be in the future attacks in outer space. Does religion and Islam in particular offer anything, any advice in that regard?
Well, what we can say is that in ancient times, the battles were quite simple. The armies met on the battlefield. One side killed off the other, and that became the victorious army. Things were simple. I mean, it was still devastating and terrible, but the result was clear.
Yeah, it was clear who won and who didn't.
Exactly.
And who died and who didn't. Right?
Nowadays, the world is so complex, and even the lesser developed countries now have weapons of mass destruction. That in the present situation, it doesn't make sense to go to war because anyone can unleash some terrible weapon of mass destruction that will have devastating effects on the population and also ruin the environment. So we really need, in our present times, for peacemakers to come to the fore. Countries need to come together. There have to be international bodies set up that are fair and properly representative of the world. We cannot have just an international body that has certain big players having the veto power and they call the shots. No, it has to be up and up, done fair and square. So a lot of these things have to be rethought so as to ensure that everyone feels included and that the world is moving towards a more peaceful outcome. Because, this is the religious perspective that I would say in a nutshell that the Quran encourages us to have. The Quran says, وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ. Their matter is to be by consultation among them. So Muslims are accustomed to consultation, well, at least should be accustomed to consultation based on the Quranic directive. But we would like to see that for the entire world. Let the world be in consultation and mutual harmony and work things out through diplomatic relations rather than through bombs and fighting.
We'll leave it at that, Dr. Shabir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If you enjoyed this video, click like and subscribe. And please donate to support our work at QuranSpeaks.com.